Bonjour, bienvenue à la table ronde L'impact du confinement sur le livre numérique à l'international, organisée dans le cadre des Assises du livre numérique 2020. Interviendront à cette occasion Étienne Bréau, directeur principal vente et marketing de marque au Québec.
Bonjour.
Javier Celaya, directeur général de dosdoce.com en Espagne.
Bonjour, thank you for inviting me.
Et Jens Klingelhofer, directeur général de Bookwire en Allemagne.
Bonjour, hello everybody, thanks for having me.
Je vous remercie d'avoir accepté tous les trois de participer à cette table ronde. Thank you for agreeing to participate to this talk. Tout comme la France, l'Espagne, l'Allemagne et le Québec ont dû faire face à une ou plusieurs périodes de confinement. L'objectif de cette table ronde est de voir, pour chacun de ces pays, quels ont été les impacts sur l'économie du livre et sur les usages, et de se demander s'il s'agit d'un épiphénomène ou de modifications durables. Pour commencer, est-ce que vous pourriez vous présenter ainsi que votre activité et votre société? Could you please present yourself and your activities to start the talk? Jens, please.
Okay, hello again. So my name is Jens Klingelhofer. I'm the CEO and the founder of Bookwire. Bookwire was founded in 2010. It's a digital service provider company specializing in distribution and marketing of all kinds of digital content. We are providing services to many publishers globally with a solution that is called Bookwire OS. Many publishers use this to manage all their activities around digital publishing, such as ebooks, digital audiobooks, and podcasts and POD products. We do have offices in some countries like Germany, Brazil, Spain, the UK, Mexico, and we also have clients in France. We have big publishing companies using our solutions. And my background lies in the music industry. I've been working in the music industry before the book industry. So I've seen already two industries being disrupted by the digital developments. And on the side, and I'm also a member of the board of the German Publishers and Booksellers Association.
Thank you. Étienne?
Étienne Brault, je suis directeur principal vente et marketing pour De Marque. Donc, on est une compagnie qui origine de Québec, au Canada. Nous sommes en activité depuis 30 ans, donc ça fait tout juste 30 ans. On est spécialisé dans la numérisation de contenu depuis 30 ans. Plus spécifiquement dans le domaine de l'édition depuis environ 12 ou 13 ans. On a développé une plateforme de distribution numérique qui offre également des outils marketing divers à nos éditeurs. Donc, c'est une plateforme qui a été originalement instituée ici au Québec. Et rapidement, le mot s'est propagé et on a été en mesure de nouer des alliances stratégiques avec des partenaires en France, au niveau de l'édition française avec Eden Livre, donc qui représente plusieurs grands groupes d'édition comme Flammarion, Gallimard, La Martinière, et également en Italie et en Espagne, où on a établi des partenariats avec Edigita au niveau de l'Italie et Libranda en Espagne, qui, à terme, est devenue une entreprise à part entière de Marque en 2018 par l'acquisition de par De Marque de Libranda. Parallèlement à la distribution de contenu numérique, on a développé une plateforme de prêt numérique, donc qui est bien implantée ici au Québec et au Canada, et également dans des marchés francophones d'Europe comme la Belgique, la France, la Suisse. Et plus récemment, au niveau de l'Espagne, où on a remporté l'appel d'offres pour les bibliothèques publiques espagnoles. Donc, on est à travailler actuellement à l'implantation de notre solution de prêt qui s'appelle Cantoxtation à l'intérieur des bibliothèques espagnoles. Donc, on est une entreprise de 60 employés qui a des bureaux ici à Québec, au Canada, Montréal, également Paris, Barcelone, Berlin, et on a également une équipe de développement web qui travaille à partir de la Chine.
Merci. Javier?
Yes, bonjour, Karen. I'm the founder of Dos Doce, a company I created almost 20 years ago to help the publishing sector, especially publishers, booksellers, and librarians to understand the digital age we're living in, and also helping foreign companies come to the Spanish markets, Spain and Latin America, to offer their service. I feel at home today in this roundtable because I have been helping the Dmorg and Bookwire to come into the Spanish market, as well as other companies like Storytel and nowadays Podimo. And as I said, the aim of my company is to help companies understand the benefits of the digital transition. We usually talk about digital in a negative context, but there are very positive side effects of digital, and especially with the pandemic that we will talk later on in this conversation. Everyone has become digital in this year. So we have basically fast forward, I will say 5 years in less than 9 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Pour remettre dans le contexte, peut-être pourriez-vous nous décrire la situation de votre pays par rapport à la crise sanitaire et rapidement, dans un premier temps, comment le confinement a été vécu par les professionnels du livre. Could you tell us what was the situation in your country in relation to the health crisis, and how was the confinement experienced by the publishing industry? Please, Jens.
Well, I think this has been pretty much the same everywhere. It was a big shock. And I think when we remember how we felt about the coming pandemic in February, when it came over from China, we thought like, oh, this is going to be a problem. But I think nobody really had the idea how much of a problem it will be. So in March, when it became clear that there will be a lockdown and companies in Europe, countries in Europe will react very strictly to this pandemic, it was of course a shock because all of a sudden all bookstores were closed. So mid of March in Germany in particular, all bookstores and all stores were closed. And of course, the expectation of the publishing industry was that this is going to be an absolute catastrophe for the business. On the digital side, and luckily we are standing on the digital side, we could immediately see a big increase in sales. So obviously it became clear that this will mean something very special to Bookwire and also to the publishers as well. And overcoming the shock of the physical closing, well, everybody was trying to adapt and react very quickly to this pandemic, and everything moved into digital, as Javier was saying. So the acceleration began very, very quickly. I think we will talk about this even more during this session. After 6 weeks of lockdown in Germany, the bookstores were reopened. So that was a very big moment again for the publishing industry, because the association and the politicians were kind of agreeing that books are very essential. And so it was one of the few industries that was allowed to reopen the stores as the first industry. That was a very nice moment, of course, because people were allowed to shop books again, not only in e-commerce, but also in physical stores. And well, the booksellers were very happy about it because they could compensate the 6 weeks of closing. And from that point on, I think on the physical side, things were becoming very creative because booksellers were improvising. Amazon and some big e-commerce giants were focusing on other things rather than books. So it was a moment of kind of meeting the clients in a different situation, being very helpful, being very close together in local areas. So I've talked to many booksellers that had really a good and exciting and very exhausting time once they were allowed to sell books again. And well, on the digital side, I think after the others could say something about the first time, I can come back to that.
Thank you. Javier?
Yes, very similar to what Jens described in Germany, but unfortunately, as you know, Spain was one of the countries in Europe that was hardest hit by the pandemic, and we were locked down for 3 months. And one thing that the book professionals discovered is that books were not essential for our government and all bookstores as well as libraries. We tend to forget that libraries were also closed down for 3 months, and basically it disrupted the whole market. Initially, the forecasts were very catastrophic, and there were figures coming from the National Federation of Publishers that it will imply a loss of almost 30 to 40% of sales this year, representing close to 100 million euros being lost. Very similar to the financial crisis we lived a decade ago, which basically 1/3 of the Spanish sales disappear from the sector. Fortunately, after the summer, the sector has recovered, and the recent forecasts by different publisher houses indicate that the loss will be between 3 to 10%. It depends on this fall. As you know, we had a second wave, not as bad as the first wave, but also regional parts of Spain were also locked down, especially like Barcelona, Madrid for a couple of weeks. So that had also an effect on sales. But the good news is that overall sales will only drop about 10% in total. In regards to the e-commerce growth, it has been tremendous. As I said, books were not essential, but e-commerce was essential during the 3-month lockdown. And we basically had a turnaround because people wanted to still read books. And we'll talk about digital, as Jen said in later on in the conversation, but in print, print books sold by e-commerce increased from 30% of the population who usually bought books through e-commerce to up to 70% of the population. Amazon has half of the market, and the other half is basically being supplied by local players like Casa del Libro from Grupo Planeta, or the Fnac, the French book chain, as well as some publishers also started selling direct, like Penguin Random House decided to start selling direct because all bookstores were closed. Also, it's been very interesting because there were no new releases. Most of the sales were backlist. It's like a renaissance of the backlist. We've seen it also in digital. A lot of sales are backlist because people rediscover many titles in their homes. But 60% of the sales were backlist. Then, after the summer, new releases came back on top, and it was very interesting. I will leave all the digital side effects of the pandemic for your next round of questions.
Okay, thank you. Étienne?
Alors, comme Jens et Javier l'ont mentionné, évidemment, le Canada n'a pas fait exception au confinement là, dès la mi-mars, ce qui devait être au départ une fermeture complète au niveau commercial, donc évidemment incluant les libraires, donc les détaillants de livres et les distributeurs. C'est rapidement transformé en une fermeture de 6 à 8 semaines, là, avec une réouverture progressive à compter du début mai, où là, on a vu des pans de l'économie commencer à se redresser, notamment au niveau du commerce de détail. Donc, les libraires ont été en mesure de rouvrir leurs portes à nouveau à compter de la mi-mai. Donc, ça a été grosso modo 8 semaines de fermeture complète. Ici, les éditeurs et les libraires ont quand même pu garder certains personnels en poste compte tenu de la subvention salariale que le gouvernement fédéral canadien a déployée, donc qui permettait aux entreprises de payer jusqu'à 75% des salaires des employés. Donc, au niveau éditorial, sur un plan commercial, évidemment, comme Javier le mentionnait, il n'y a pas eu vraiment de pub plan de nouveautés au printemps, puisque tout a été déporté sur l'automne, compte tenu que commercialement, ce n'était peut-être pas la situation idéale, mais les éditeurs ont quand même pu garder certains employés en poste. Également au niveau des distributeurs, comme Javier le mentionnait, le e-commerce, donc la vente en ligne, autant au niveau physique que numérique, a rapidement explosé avec la fermeture des libraires. Donc, au niveau de la distribution, bien évidemment, tout le réseau de distribution vers les points de vente en ligne de livres physiques et numériques se sont mis à tourner à plein. Donc, évidemment, ça inclut de marques où là, on a eu une pléiade d'éditeurs qui ont eu, je vous dirais, au fil des années, une relation intéressée avec le numérique, mais plus ou moins active commercialement, qui tout à coup sont revenus vers nous pour justement demander l'aide de marques et notre expertise dans la commercialisation de leurs livres numériques. Donc, on a assisté vraiment à une explosion au niveau des demandes, autant des éditeurs qui étaient déjà clients chez nous, et on a vu apparaître toute une série d'éditeurs qui s'étaient peu ou pas intéressés au numérique, au fil des années qui nous ont contactés pour justement là, voir quels sont les modèles de distribution numérique. L'autre domaine qui a vraiment explosé beaucoup, c'est au niveau des bibliothèques, donc qui se sont rapidement imposées comme étant une offre pour la lecture en ligne là, en période de confinement pour les gens qui étaient évidemment là, sans emploi ou confinés chez eux. Et on a assisté à une très, très forte explosion au niveau des ventes de bibliothèques qui ont permis de compenser les pertes qui sont survenues dans le commerce de détail là, par les éditeurs. Alors, on a assisté vraiment à cette explosion au niveau du prêt numérique, qui a plus que doublé là, sur une base quotidienne là, au niveau des consultations. Et évidemment, les bibliothèques ont dû, pour répondre à cette demande accrue là, au niveau du prêt numérique, faire des acquisitions massives et les municipalités, les gouvernements ont rapidement octroyé des budgets additionnels aux bibliothèques pour qu'ils puissent justement se munir là, de copies numériques additionnelles pour permettre à leurs usagers de faire la lecture de livres en ligne. Donc, ça a été une industrie un marché qui a un peu pris la relève pendant la période là, de confinement et qui s'est avéré là, vraiment là, quelque chose de très intéressant pour les éditeurs et également pour les libraires, parce qu'ici, au Québec, la loi là, imposée par le ministère de la Culture oblige les éditeurs à passer via des libraires pour faire la vente de contenu physique ou numérique aux bibliothèques. Donc, ce qui a assuré un certain revenu au niveau du marché de la librairie là, pendant la période de confinement.
Merci Étienne. Let's talk about reader behaviors in terms of buying and borrowing books and about digital ebooks as well. Javier first.
Okay. Yes, as I did in my initial introduction, we have seen a boost of digital consumption during the lockdown due to the inability to go out of our homes for basically 3 months. One of the most gratifying outcomes of this pandemic was that close to 150,000 Spaniards discovered the public library digital service, eBiblio, in most of the original communities, and eLiburutegia. There are 2 services, e-library service here in Spain. And although these services have been in the Spanish market for more than 5 years, now being managed eBiblio by DeMarc. As I said, close to 150,000 Spaniards discovered these services for the first time. And this is very good news because people wanted to read, but they could not able to go to a bookstore, and they discovered the digital service, and they started reading online ebooks and audiobooks because both platforms also serve audiobooks. So it was a huge boost, and the government had to sit down, not physically, through screens with the publishers to negotiate a non-concurrent license because there was so much demand for many titles. That the publishers, for the first time, and I think it created a very good precedent, decided to give a non-concurrent license in order to allow more people to read the same books and not to wait, 3 or 6 weeks for those titles to be available in their phones, tablets, or desktops. So that was one of the very good news. Another very good news was the streaming services for audiobooks and ebooks. Again, these services like Nubico from Planeta or Storytel for audiobooks, as well as the Script and other players in the market, as Kobo. All of them have been in the market between 3 to 5 years, but a lot of people discovered the service. All these platforms have indicated that they have doubled and tripled the number of subscribers during the lockdown period. Most of them offer greater periods of free access instead of the 14 or 30 days. There were some platforms offering 30 and up to 60 days for free access into the platforms, which I think allow a lot of people to discover and enjoy those platforms and its content. So that was also another piece of very, very good news. And then during the summer, both of these platforms, e-lending in libraries, as well as subscription services for ebooks and audiobooks, have continued the growth, not at the same double and triple number of growth that took place during the first period, but at a similar rate in regards to a continued growth. Most of them are declaring at least 10 to 15% growth this year compared to last year. And the same happened in Latin America. Less in the e-library service because there are not that many e-library services in Latin America, just basically in Mexico, Colombia and Argentina, but the rest of the region doesn't have lending library service implemented very strongly. But subscription services grew a lot also in Latin America during the summertime, their winter of this year. Also, it's been very interesting that many publishers, right after the health crisis, we, especially in Spain, started to experience a very hard economic scenario. We have like 20% unemployment rate now in Spain because a lot of companies closed their factories or their offices, or the business came down. So I think very smartly, many publishers have started reducing the price of their ebooks and audiobooks. Before the pandemic, the average new release was above $9.99, even $12.99 and $14.99. And you can see in many retail stores today, new releases for less than $9.99, even $8.99. And I think it's very smart because a lot of people, ebooks as well as print books are becoming a luxury if they're too heavy to prices. So I think another tendency that we'll see in the next months is also a reduction in the price in order to be able to meet the market demands in a better way. Also, what we've seen is more publishers going direct digitally. They were hesitant to do it before the pandemic because they were thinking that the bookstore community might retaliate against them for going direct, selling ebooks and even e-commerce print books. But I think this pandemic has reset all the rules, and everyone has understood that you have to activate the market the best way that you can, and even publishers going direct. Whereas in in many other markets like the the UK and the US, and I think also in Germany, many publishers had some e-commerce operation before the pandemic. It has never represented more than 10 or 50% of the total sales. But in Spain, especially none of the big groups like Penguin Random House never dared to go direct. But the pandemic basically allowed them to go direct, as well as Planeta in Latin America never dared to go direct. And they decided, for example, in Argentina to close a deal with Mercado Libre, which is the Amazon of the South America, in order to be able to meet the demands of their readers. To me, those has been the biggest strengths in the Spanish markets during the pandemic and after the pandemic.
Thank you, Javier. Jens?
Talking about the German market in particular, what I'm focusing on today, the German market is a bit more mature ebook and also a digital audiobook market. We could see a very, very big impact on reading and listening during the lockdown phase. We could see an incredible increase in downloads in the first phase. So it was up to 50% of download increase in audio and ebook. Of course, it was focused on certain categories. It was focused on juvenile, kids content, and mainly entertainment stuff. So I would say it's not the contribution to the publishing industry in terms of surviving was not very equal. So some of them benefited very much, of course, when it comes to political books or something like that, or certain nonfiction categories, they did not benefit, whereas nonfiction categories like gardening and things for like things that you would do at home and improving your situation and using the time efficiently that you have, that people had more, these categories were benefiting. So the biggest impact definitely we saw on audiobooks, this was anyway the sector with the biggest dynamics. So we've been through many years of ebook growth, but in the last years, the ebook growth had been kind of stable, not zero, not at all. I was always one of the people saying, no, it's still growing. Some people just don't see it, and it's growing 10 or 20% continuously year by year. But in this pandemic, obviously, audiobooks were outperforming ebooks. So I think we've won a large number of customers in the audiobook segment, mainly driven by subscription platforms. Even though we had the bigger peak on downloads in the audio segment at the beginning, the more sustainable effect came from streaming, because we could see our streams and usage in platforms such as Spotify and so on, which are very, very much used in the German market already for spoken word content. So we could see an increase of over 50%. So for I would say, a mature market, if you want to say so, mature in digital, this was a very, very, very successful boost for the digital business. And we can now see that it has had a very sustainable effect throughout the summer. And now it's going a little bit back to normal. So I think I'm pretty much excited about the holiday season now, how this will continue now. Another very important point is that we could see the market responding to marketing campaigns extremely. You have to know the German market is probably not so well known for marketing campaigns. Publishers do marketing campaigns, but the German market is a fixed price market. If you compare that to Spain or to even Brazil and Latin America, where we could see growth rates of 100, 200%, it was incredible what was going on in these markets. But you could see that these price campaigns that we did with our publishers in the German market, that the market was reacting very well to it. So that was a proof for us, and we also conducted a study on this together with Rüdiger Wischenbart on these COVID-19 effects. We think that there is a huge potential in price marketing that became visible because so many people were attracted to digital products at that time. So I think, well, in a nutshell, it's a very, very big digital boost for the market. I'm expecting a sustainable effect. I think I'm a bit disappointed about the performance of September and October, but probably this is a seasonality effect as we have every year, and so I'm quite excited how this is going to change towards Christmas now.
Thank you, Jens. Etienne?
One point, sorry, I
yes.
forgot the library point.
Yes.
The thing about libraries is the budget has not changed. So that is probably one of the things that have to be discussed next year in politics, because of course there is I would say, natural conflict between publishers and libraries. Of course, publishers don't want libraries to provide, I would say, the core business, mass market, whereas libraries want to have a very, very nice offering for everybody in the society. So, but the budgets have not been increased, and as you know, in the regular library lending models, you cannot have too many parallel loans and usage. So we haven't seen something like Javier reported for Spain. That did not happen in the German market. So there was a significant increase in the libraries, but I think, talking about the German market, the bigger increase was in downloading and streaming, because that was what people had immediate access to, because they had to solve a problem immediately with their kids and families, making sure that they have enough entertainment and homeschooling material. So libraries were growing, but I think this is something for the coming year to discuss budgets and libraries and see if the state can increase budgets for libraries. I would welcome that very much.
Thank you. Etienne?
Oui, bien. Alors, sur le marché canadien, bon, si on divise un peu le marché entre grand public et le marché de la bibliothèque, dont j'ai parlé un peu plus tôt, au niveau grand public, c'est sûr que bon, dès le mois d'avril, on a assisté, nous, chez nos éditeurs qui distribuent autant sur les grandes plateformes externes, Amazon, Apple, Kobo et autres, ou encore via les sites des libraires indépendants du Québec, on a assisté à une très, très forte augmentation au niveau du commerce de détail. de l'ordre de 165 %. Alors, donc, si on compare avril 2020 sur avril 2019, on est dans une progression de 165 % au niveau des ventes, qui s'est par la suite maintenue avec la réouverture des librairies sur la période estivale. Ce qui fait qu'en quelque sorte, si on comparait les 10 premiers mois de l'année 2020 avec les 10 premiers mois de l'année 2019, on est autour d'une croissance de 65 % pour le marché du grand public. Un fait qui est particulier et ce que Javier et Jens ont souligné au niveau des plateformes par abonnement, le marché de la plateforme par abonnement ici au Québec est encore assez balbutiement. Les éditeurs, distribuent, il y a peu d'offres, en fait, en termes de plateformes par abonnement. Les grands joueurs mondiaux comme Storytel et tout sont à peu près absents ici. Et au niveau des contenus d'éditeurs québécois, donc des contenus francophones publiés ici au Québec, c'est quand même un nombre assez limité d'offres au niveau des plateformes par abonnement. On voit tranquillement là, un phénomène là, s'enclencher, mais pour l'instant, autant au niveau de l'audio qu'au niveau du e-book, on est dans un modèle de vente là, unitaire au détail. Donc, en termes de croissance, ça a été assez important. Et entre juin et octobre, on voit qu'il y a eu effectivement un maintien de cette vigueur-là au niveau des ventes numériques. Oui, il y a eu un certain recul. Bon, on ne peut pas s'attendre à vivre des mois d'avril 2020 à tous les mois. Par contre, on se maintient quand même autour de 24 % d'augmentation versus l'année précédente. Donc, on voit qu'il y a eu une rétention de la clientèle au sein du numérique, donc des gens qui ont basculé peut-être d'un mode de lecture dans des formats plus conventionnels comme en papier vers le mode numérique et qui ont trouvé leur compte et qui ont été séduits par l'offre numérique. Sur le plan commercial, il y a eu effectivement des initiatives marketing assez imposantes là, déployées par les éditeurs, notamment via un service que Demarque a développé qui s'appelle Kanto Courrier, donc, qui à l'origine, dans son esprit, était prévu pour être un outil d'acheminement de copies numériques par les éditeurs à différents clients ou différents segments de marché ou, par exemple, à des journalistes dans le cadre des nouvelles parutions, donc des contenus numériques qui sont protégés via un verrou de sécurité. Et les éditeurs, autant ici au Québec que chez nos partenaires en France et en Italie, là, notamment, là, qui ont été très, très, très créatifs avec cet outil-là pour justement envoyer des copies numériques à des clientèles ciblées dans leur base de données qui, justement, dans le but d'intéresser les gens au numérique et de les amener à consommer numérique. Et ce sont des initiatives qui ont été très, très importantes et qui ont été qui ont obtenu des résultats très probants au niveau de l'engagement des gens vers le numérique et du développement d'habitudes de lecture sur le plan du numérique. Alors ça, c'est ce qui est intéressant. Un peu comme Jens le disait, disons, les éditeurs traditionnellement faisaient un marketing plus là, conventionnel et plus standard. Et là, ben, du fait du confinement et de ce phénomène numérique-là, ben, ils ont développé des nouvelles stratégies de vente là, pour attirer les gens vers le numérique et tirer leur épingle du jeu. Au niveau des bibliothèques, l'avantage qu'on a eu ici au Canada, c'est que rapidement, les budgets d'acquisition des bibliothèques, comparativement à ce que Jens là, parlait au niveau de l'Allemagne, rapidement, les budgets ont été multipliés. Ça a été une initiative là, du gouvernement qui a été très, 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 très rapide. Et également, les bibliothèques se sont rapidement recentrées là, au niveau de leur budget vers le numérique. Donc, au lieu de faire leurs acquisitions papier qu'ils avaient l'habitude de faire, bien là, les bibliothèques étant fermées et l'accès restreint, bien, ils ont basculé tout le budget vers le numérique, ce qui a fait que là, déjà en avril, on avait perçu une augmentation de 300 % au niveau des ventes. Et ici, il faut voir que culturellement, l'usage de licences d'utilisation ou d'offres bibliothèques avec des modèles de consultation simultanée n'est pas encore très répandu, de sorte que rapidement après le début de la pandémie, où le prêt numérique ici au Québec tournait entre 7 et 8 000 prêts quotidiennement, donc ça, c'était dans les bonnes journées. Donc, les journées de 8 000 étant les journées records pré-COVID. On est tombé rapidement à 13 ou 14 000 prêts numériques quotidiennement, ce qui a fait en sorte que les tablettes numériques se sont retrouvées finalement rapidement vidées de leur contenu. Donc, ce qui a obligé les bibliothèques à réactiver des licences là, expirées ou encore à acquérir davantage de licences de même titre pour assurer à leurs usagers là, une disponibilité un peu plus accrue. Donc, alors que dans d'autres marchés, ça a été, comme on l'a vu en France chez nos partenaires au niveau de Gallimard, Flammarion et plusieurs diffusions françaises qui ont décidé de multiplier les consultations simultanées par titre afin de justement permettre à un plus grand nombre l'accès. Alors qu'au Canada, ça s'est passé un peu dans un phénomène inverse où c'est plutôt les bibliothèques qui ont compensé en faisant l'acquisition additionnelle de licences, alors qu'au niveau des types de licences offertes, il y a eu un certain maintien, dans le fond, entre ce qui existait avant la COVID et après. Maintenant, qu'est-ce qui adviendra de ce modèle au niveau des licences, par exemple en bibliothèque? Il y a certaines réflexions là, chez les éditeurs justement qui se disent, ben oui, peut-être qu'on devrait élargir un peu plus l'accessibilité simultanée à des licences. Mais pour l'heure, on est encore là, assez sur le statu quo. Et le marché de l'abonnement au Québec et au Canada est encore assez embryonnaire. On va voir un peu comment ça va se dessiner, mais pour l'instant, ça reste quand même un pourcentage des ventes, les ventes par abonnement qui sont assez négligeables par rapport au total des ventes numériques ici au Canada.
Merci Étienne. Alors, vous avez évoqué la question du développement des outils numériques par les éditeurs. Je vais poser un peu la même question. Jens, Javier, has the publisher developed digital tools during lockdown?
Well, as I said at the beginning, publishers have kind of restarted all their digital activities after a 2-week or 3-week shock. So I think we have all adapted to new work. So for my company, that was kind of normal because we have teams abroad in Brazil, Spain, and all over the place. So that was normal for us. But all of a sudden, of course, we could have very fruitful online conferences with everybody. I think we all experienced that. So I saw also workflows changing and a lot of acceleration on digital projects. And I think, well, speaking from Bookwire's standpoint, point of view. So we have always been providing the tools for publishers to manage the digital product and the life cycle and the marketing of the product perfectly well. And so we felt like, okay, this is a very big chance to get publishers again into this, using our analytics tools, using our marketing services, and I think we've seen a very big push here. And I feel of course confirmed in this way of providing such tools for publishers. I think still, but there is a long way ahead, and I think this is a reminder. I think this phase has been a reminder of that digital does not only mean ebook, and digital does not only mean digital audiobook. It means transformation of industry in terms of how we work, how we communicate, and how we market our products, how we find our customers in the market. How we communicate to these customers, whether we do direct to consumer sales or not, how we manage this complex multi-format, multi-channel world that is not only between two book covers anymore. It's been multiple, there's multiple formats, multiple target groups. And if you talk about the difference between the baby boomers and the Generation Z, well, you will find out that they don't have much in common in terms of consumption. So I think, yes, they have developed some tools, but this has just been the first step, or maybe the second step. I've said this many times, that digitalization has just started from my perspective, and maybe it has now finally started for everyone, for everybody. But this is still a long way ahead. And as we are competing with many good media industries next to us that are very smart and that know how to go after the customer's wallet and the customer's time, we have to continuously invest in digital products now as a complementing product to a good physical product that we luckily have in the book industry, what other industries don't have anymore. So I think it's been a very good wake-up call for everybody. If this is the positive side of a very bad and dramatic pandemic, this is definitely the positive side of it.
Thank you. Javier?
Yeah, fully agree. At least in the Spanish market, there has not been that much investment yet in digital. I think after the initial shock, what we have seen is a change of mindset in the publishing community, especially publishers. As I said, for them, the biggest surprise that the government basically realized or indicated that books were not essential. And that shocked them completely. And for the initial weeks, they were completely lost because they were never expecting that kind of scenario. And now I think they have realized that the new normal, as everyone calls it, is going to be much more digital than we can ever imagine. All our book fairs, even this one, the Paris one or Frankfurt or Spain, or also this week is celebrated in Mexico. All the book fairs have been digital. Next year, hopefully, we will have some physical book fairs, and we'll have again the Bookwire party in Frankfurt. But there's no doubt that all of those book fairs will have a strong digital component. There will be talks, there will be buy and sell of rights, there will be much more digital processes than we ever expected. For the booksellers, I think they have realized they have to invest much more money in e-commerce. You cannot wait for the reader to come to your store. You have to bring the physical book, in this case, to their home. And for the publishers, I think has been a radical change in their mindset about the business models of going digital. A lot of them had this like window strategy or trying to delay or stop embracing models like streaming or subscription. We haven't seen the radical change that we've seen this week with Warner going directly to streaming. We might see that also in the publishing sector, you know, taking those decisions, going to market different ways than we've done it in the past. But I think we have at least seen a change of reaction from the publishing sector saying, this is here to stay, digital is here to stay, digital is going to continue growing, and we have to embrace it, either you like it or not, because basically it has become the only proactive way to go to market. So I have seen more investment from the publishers in marketing, digital market. Before they were doing something, but now they take it much more seriously, especially social media channels, and also embracing more going into digital formats. Publishers that were hesitant to go, for example, into audiobooks, they started doing after pandemic months, converting into ebooks and audiobooks. There was a publishing house here in Spain called Blackie eBooks that for many years maintained their theme that they will never do a digital format, and this pandemic forced them. I think also it was an opportunity for them to realize that there's nothing wrong going digital, to start publishing ebooks, and now they also other publishing houses like Anagrama have started publishing audiobooks. So I think the change of mindset is here to stay, and this next decade is going to be much more digital than we all expected. So it's good news.
Yes. Étienne, vous voulez rajouter un petit mot sur le développement d'outils numériques?
Oui, bien, certainement. Bien, je ne répéterai pas ce que Jens et Javier ont mentionné. Évidemment que bon, il y a une durabilité dans cette nouvelle ère numérique qu'on perçoit nous aussi. Tant au niveau du nombre de contenus que les éditeurs souhaitent numériser et rendre conformes aux besoins du marché, parce que bon, on a été longtemps dans un marché où les éditeurs allaient produire par exemple que du PDF dans certains cas et tout, et là on a vraiment une volonté de s'actualiser, de rendre les contenus disponibles au plus grand nombre de réseaux de vendeurs et de marchés, en offrant justement des contenus dans les formats les plus à jour en termes de qualité et aussi en termes de fonctionnalité, parce qu'on était déjà dans une vague où l'accessibilité, par exemple, au niveau du numérique, est un sujet de discussion qui est sur toutes les lèvres. Et le fait que maintenant, une large part au niveau scolaire, par exemple, que des élèves qui soient du niveau primaire ou secondaire, donc ce qui correspond, là, nous, ici au Canada, à clientèle de 6 à 16 ou 17 ans, et même au-delà dans les études postsecondaires, au niveau collégial et universitaire, la question de l'accessibilité est sur toutes les lèvres, parce que maintenant, on voit toute cette clientèle étudiante qui doit suivre des cours à distance en totalité ou en partie. Dans le cas des élèves plus vieux ou des étudiants d'université, c'est 100% de l'enseignement qui est fait à distance maintenant. et à des âges un peu plus jeunes, mais là, ça varie évidemment selon les niveaux, leur réceptivité là, au numérique, là, à l'enseignement en numérique à distance. Mais c'est vraiment un nouveau marché qui est en train de poindre et nous, c'est vraiment ce que je retiens des 4 ou 5 derniers mois, alors qu'il y avait planait le spectre de la fermeture des écoles là, au niveau de la rentrée scolaire à l'automne. On a vu beaucoup d'éditeurs scolaires qui étaient traditionnellement dans des modèles de transmission de leur contenu en format papier, vouloir là, très rapidement se convertir au numérique pour être capable d'offrir cette alternative là, dans un contexte où c'est très changeant. Et nous, ce qu'on entend et ce qu'on perçoit, c'est qu'en termes d'enseignement au niveau postsecondaire notamment, les universités ne rouvriront plus jamais comme elles l'ont été avant la COVID. Il y avait déjà une tendance vers le téléenseignement donc, depuis plusieurs années. Donc, il y a certains programmes qui s'offrent exclusivement à distance, donc via une formule de téléenseignement. Par contre, avec ce passage forcé vers le téléenseignement, bien, les gens y trouvent leur compte, tant au niveau des enseignants qu'au niveau des étudiants, et ça permet justement à un plus grand nombre d'étudiants d'accéder à des programmes ou à des contenus de nature universitaire. Alors, nous, on perçoit que ce segment-là va être en très forte croissance dans les prochaines années, et on le voit, beaucoup d'éditeurs s'activent, posent des questions sur la distribution numérique auxquelles ils ne s'étaient jamais vraiment intéressés parce que là, la situation le commande et on a toutes les semaines des appels d'éditeurs pédagogiques ou académiques qui veulent justement là, comprendre comment ça fonctionne et, le cas échéant, offrir leur contenu à leurs clients potentiels.
Merci. Et donc, peut-être en guise de conclusion, est-ce que vous pensez que ces évolutions vont laisser une trace durable? On y a déjà un peu répondu. Et comment voyez-vous le futur pour vous et puis peut-être votre société? Do you think, to conclude, that these evolutions will leave lasting traces in the uses? And how do you see the future for your company and for the publishing industry? Étienne, pour commencer?
Oui, bien, je vous dirais effectivement, là, dans la vente directe aux acheteurs de livres là, par les éditeurs est une avenue qui est explorée par plusieurs dans certains contextes. Le marché de la bibliothèque chez nous au Canada est en très, très forte croissance et ça a éveillé justement beaucoup d'usagers de bibliothèques sur l'offre numérique des bibliothèques. Donc, il y a un site qui a été créé ici au Québec par BiblioPresto, qui est l'organisme qui gère l'ensemble du prêt numérique en bibliothèque, qui s'appelle infobiblio.ca, où justement les gens peuvent se tenir informés des ressources numériques que les bibliothèques souvent offrent depuis plusieurs années. Par exemple, le prêt numérique n'est pas nouveau ici au Québec et au Canada. Par contre, ça a éveillé les gens sur le prêt numérique et du fait ici que commercialement, il y a une espèce de vide laissé par les plateformes par abonnement, bien, la bibliothèque de ta ville devient un acteur très important dans la diffusion de contenu numérique. Et on le remarque, on a environ là, 94 000 nouvelles adhésions à la plateforme de prêt numérique au cours de la pandémie. Et ce qui fait qu'il y avait un nouveau compte créé à toutes les 90 secondes là, par des usagers des bibliothèques. Donc, nous, on perçoit qu'ici au Canada, ce sera un mouvement qui est très fort. Et comme je l'ai mentionné précédemment et comme Javier l'a évoqué, on se dirige maintenant du côté de l'Espagne où on sera en charge de la gestion là, technique du prêt numérique de la plateforme eBiblio. Et on croit fermement que ce marché-là va continuer à croître et à prendre de l'expansion. Et également, on essaie d'éveiller les éditeurs. Nous, notre rôle là, sur le plan commercial est non seulement de les aider à vendre leurs livres, à les diffuser là, aux endroits les plus propices pour eux, mais également de les éveiller sur différents modèles commerciaux. Entre autres, bon, on a l'abonnement là, qui est en émergence dans beaucoup de marchés là, à travers le monde, mais également au niveau, par exemple, des offres qui sont faites aux bibliothèques. Est-ce que d'offrir des licences de prêt très longues avec 55 prêts un à la fois, donc où la licence finit par expirer là, après plusieurs années, si elle en vient à expiration, parce que, bon, évidemment, ce n'est pas tous les titres qui sont empruntés là, de façon équivalente. Donc, d'essayer d'éveiller les éditeurs sur différents modèles d'affaires au niveau des bibliothèques. Par exemple, offrir des licences un peu plus courtes à une fraction du prix qui permet aux bibliothèques d'élargir l'éventail de leur catalogue et de justement jouer ce rôle de plateforme d'abonnement qui permet d'offrir accès au plus grand nombre de contenus à un plus grand nombre d'usagers à la fois. Alors, en ayant, comme je vous dis, des licences plus courtes qui permettent aux bibliothèques d'essayer plus de titres, des licences qui vont expirer à terme, mais là, après, la bibliothèque peut faire le choix soit de racheter une licence équivalente ou encore d'aller vers une licence un peu plus longue, la simultanéité à travers ça. Bref, au niveau des bibliothèques, c'est un marché là, qui est à ne pas oublier et qui tend à être en forte expansion, au-delà du marché scolaire dont j'ai parlé précédemment.
Javier?
Yes, I think we all realize that digital is here to stay and is going fast forward, as I said, at a speed that basically will force the publishing community to really embrace digital in the next few years. From the library's point of view, I agree with Jens that the governments have to do an extra effort in the budgets to allocate more money to purchase more licenses in order for this channel to be able to give better service to their constituencies. But also, I think publishers have to come to terms that they have to negotiate better license terms with the library channel, because if not, they will not be able to provide a good service. I know we always have to fight that balance between the service provided by a public service and the needs of a private sector like the publishing community. But I think also this pandemic has discovered many publishers the revenues derived from the library channels because of these new users coming into this channel that they were not there before. Nowadays in the Spanish markets, the library channel represents less than 5% of total revenues. But I think because of this lockdowns and this new discovery could increase up to 10% this year. So it's becoming a more solid channel for many publishers. For the booksellers, as I said, they will have to invest in e-commerce tools in order to be able to give service to their readers and take the books to their homes or to their office or to whatever they want. And also I think they will have to invest more in digital services in order to be able to create book clubs and in order to be able to have presentations online. And in that minute that the author is meeting with the bookseller, that they can also sell the print book, the ebook, or the audiobook. I think during this pandemic, there were many events organized by booksellers and by publishers. It was great for marketing, but they provided very few revenues. And I think we have to change the mindset and start thinking that when you're on the screen and you're listening to your favorite author, there should be different buttons there. Do you want the book to be taken home right now, signed by the author? Or do you want the ebook? Do you want the audiobook right now? Because that impulse that we had in the physical world that provoke, many people say provoke up to 40% of the physical sales, that you discovered the book and you wanted the book. We have also to provoke that impulse in digital. And then finally, for publishers, I've been recommending for many years to embrace digital and to, transform your catalog into ebook and audiobook and to do, multi-platform distribution. And I think now I have to, even recommend that even more because, as I said, the new normal is going to be more digital than we expect.
Thank you. And Jens?
Generally, it sounds a bit like Markus Dohle speaking, but I'm very positive about the publishing industry in general. As long as we do our homework, I think we couldn't imagine how important content is for other businesses today. We thought, or many people thought some years ago, that content is not relevant anymore. It's only the access to the consumer. It's only the retailer. So now let's look at what content is moving. Look at the movie industry, look at the audio industry, look at voice itself. So actually, as long as we as an industry really reassure ourselves that we are a content industry and not only a book industry, and we make the right decisions in which form and in which form our content can be marketed and in which way we are able to communicate it to the consumer, and that we have to stay very relevant for our authors. I mean, being the perfect middleman, not the gatekeeper as we used to be by accident in the past because we knew how to print books and sell that stuff. Now we have to be the best in our discipline and compete against the other media industries that are pretty smart, as I mentioned earlier. So I think I'm generally very positive, and I think if we really build out new muscles, and new muscles can be the way how we understand our author or our consumer. It can be another format, like, of course, we could discuss today how we move into the audiobook space even more, and maybe from there into the podcast space, or, well, I would prefer to do everything at the same time. And as long as the leaders in our industry, leading companies, really commit to invest further into digital and be courageous about it, I think then we can really prevail and have a good next decade. It's a new decade coming. We can feel it. My partner here in the company does an astrology podcast. What is quite an interesting system that I don't really believe in, but it says there has been a big change in the constellations. So I think we should maybe use those like momentums and take our business on the next level. And of course, I have some concerns regarding the concentration on the retail and the platform side. That is certainly something that, well, we have to care about. I think the winner takes it all industry or effect of digital industries is very, very well concerning. I think we all agree that we need a diverse landscape. So I can only encourage everybody to go into as many models as you can and experiment, as we did with ebooks in the past, and now maybe doing this with audiobooks and podcasts and new formats. And of course, I think we have to continue talking to our politicians as an industry, because we are not always so well organized. I think you in France are way more organized in this regard than other countries, because we are not the loudest, we are not the biggest, and we have to make sure that culture itself remains its place in the heads and the hearts of the politicians. And as I see a new generation of politicians coming up that may be more like Generation Z than baby boomer, we have to find concepts, also how to send our message to them. So I think, well, summing up, I'm very positive. I'm worried about the share, how the value is being distributed among everybody in the value chain. But I think the most crucial factor is really embracing the future, investing into the future, what has not always been a priority for publishers. And last but not least, develop the capability to adapt and to make sure that we don't expect our business to be the same in 5 years, expect it to be different, and develop our organizations in a way and our strategies, how we go to market, in a way that we can adapt. And I think that's really probably, may sound very abstract, but I think it's probably the most important capability that we can develop as industry companies.
Thank you both for your intervention. Je vous remercie tous les trois pour vos interventions, en espérant que notre public des Assises ait apprécié ce format inédit pour cette édition si particulière. Sachez que vous retrouverez la synthèse de cet échange sur le site internet du SNE. Well, time to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you for inviting.